Hello, everyone. I'm one of the TAs for the Business 211 capsim lab. I do a lot of online classes, and I'm making this video to show you guys how to correctly forecast. It's been a problem that's brought up frequently, and I would say it's one of the hardest concepts to understand in this class. So, in this video, I'll spend the first half going over what forecasting is, how to use it in the real world, and what it actually means to create a forecast. The second half of the video, I'll be showing you guys the formulas and a little Excel sheet that I can make to make it a little bit easier. One thing that you guys need to keep in mind, though, is that forecasting is never an exact science. It's pretty impossible, even in the real world, to make a completely perfect forecast for anything. And so a lot of this is going to be based off of your own personal judgment and the general way that your own market is going. So I will give you a very helpful calculator, but I can't guarantee that it's going to work perfectly because it's based off of your own decisions. So I'm just going to jump right into it right now. So forecasting is found right here in marketing. The first thing about forecasting that you want to keep in mind is this benchmark prediction here is a forecast that is generated for you by the computer. It's an input number that is completely useless, essentially a randomly generated number, just that the computer gives you so that you don't have a zero forecast to begin with and all your numbers are messed up. It's only there to make sure that you don't freak out and that there's something in there before you put in your real forecast. If you base your forecast off of this number here, it's going to be wrong 100% of the time because it's a random number that's useless for forecasting. So you guys might be wondering, well, if that's a useless number, I can't base anything off of this 1085. How do I create a good forecast? So the first thing that you need to do when you are creating a forecast is you need to look at your market. All of these reports right here are your market. This is your fast track, and I would say it's the most important thing that you put into your forecast. So if I pull this up here and I scroll down to this fourth page right here, I can see the number of units that I sold last round. I sold 1,419 units, but I had 92 units left over. That means that my forecast last round, my production last round, because I produced around 500 units, it was over forecasted by 92 units. So I need to take that into account for this round. You can see that everyone else also did their own forecasts, and they were also over forecasting by a couple hundred each. You need to keep into account in your forecast your competition, how much they are producing, and new products that are entering the market. So with days in the market, they're currently taking, we scroll down here, days in the market, they are currently taking 17% of the market. They are creating a new product though. So they've gone from one product controlling 17% of the market, and they are creating a new product that's going to take a little bit of that piece of a pie. Every single product that enters the market, you can think of as a new piece being added to the pie. And that piece, if it's a good product, is going to take away just a portion of your market share. And so with two new products entering the market, one from Days and one from, I believe, Baker, one from this company that created Days, which is Digby, one from Digby and one from whatever this one is. We see that Bold is a new product and we see that Dabble is a new product. You know that something is a new product because they have 0 units sold, 0 inventory. They also don't have any age numbers, mean time before failure numbers, or performance numbers. So this means that it's currently in production. It's in the works by R&D, but it's not currently out on the line. This means that it's going to be out in the next round. So right now it's round 1. I know that Dabble is going to be on the market in round 2. And I know that because there are 2 new products entering the market, Bold and Dabble, there are two more slices of that pie that are going to steal my market share. So I don't want to be too generous with how much market share I'm going to take because with every new product, I can take less and less percent of that market share, especially if these products are well positioned and well priced. The same thing applies if you create your own products. You can see right here that I've created this product right here called Apple. If Able and Apple are in this exact same position, similar pricing, then I know that Apple is going to take away from Able's market share. And so I need to take that into account in my forecast because it's going to change based on how many products are entering the market. So I've given you all these complicated numbers and I've said, well, you need to take this into account and this into account, and you are, I'm sure, plenty confused. So I'm going to show you how to use all of these numbers that I've shown you to create a forecast. So the basis of the forecast, just ignoring any kind of competition, is based around how many people are in the market. You can see right here that the total industry unit demand is 5,544 units. And you can also see that the next year's segment growth rate is 10%. And so that means that in round one, there was 5,000 people in the low tech. In round two, which is the round that I'm currently working in, there are going to be 10% more. So that's another factor that I need to take into account in my forecasting, because no market is ever stable. There are people entering and leaving every market on everywhere in the planet. So I've told you a couple of things to take into account. The first thing that you need to do, the basis of your forecast, is going to be you need to know how many people are in low tech and how many people are in high tech for round two. So in round one for low tech, here, let's move this over a little bit. For low tech, we know that the industry unit demand is 5,544. We also know that the segment growth rate for next year, so for round two, it's going to be 10%. So 0.1 right there. I'm going to call this growth rate. If I go down to number right here, I can make this growth rate a percentage. One thing for you guys to keep in mind, I am creating this Excel document for you, but you're going to get a much nicer one as an actual class project later. This is just to hold you guys over and help you with your forecasts until you get the opportunity to make that nicer one. Okay, so I have the unit demand and I have the growth rate. And I know that if I want to find the next round unit demand, I can assume that the equation for this is going to be this industry unit demand, so that 500 or 5,544. So industry unit demand times this growth rate. But you have to take into account that if I just multiply 5,000 by 10%, I'm going to get something around 500. So I need to add back in the original number. And so this formula right here is actually going to be 1 plus the growth rate, shown right there. So I can do this in Excel pretty easily. Just take this column right here, put an equal sign in, you click on the industry unit demand, then you press that right there, this is the multiplied by, and then I have to take into account that 1 plus, so I add a parentheses right there, 1 plus this growth rate right there. Close it off, press enter, and I know that in round two, there are going to be 6,098 people in the low tech. Exactly. This is what the simulation is telling me. But I also need to take into account high tech. So I'm just going to do that real quick. High tech, there are this many people, 2,592. Growth rate for high tech is 20% or 0.2. What I'm going to do right here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this to a percent right there. If you go to number, you click this percentage symbol. That's how you do it. And then I'm just going to copy and paste that formula over. So low tech has grown by 10%. Don't do that. Okay. Low tech has grown by 10% to 6,000 people. High tech has grown by 20% to 3,000 people. So now I can actually start doing my forecasting because I know how many people are going to be in the market for round two, my current round. You can always check what round you're in by looking up in this top corner here. You can see that I am in round two. Essentially, whenever you're making your decisions, you are on January 1st of round two. You can also see what year it is right here. So round two is 2026. Okay, so if I open these back up, I have my unit demand. Now I need to take into account how many products I need to make. You can see that I was able right here. I sold 404 units to high tech. I sold 1,015 units to low tech. I also didn't stock out, as you can see. And so you could spitball this by taking these market shares here. You can look at this 18%. You can just multiply these numbers by 18% and the low tech one of 16%. But they give you a very nice market share report just below the high tech and low tech segments. So this here, page 7, is your market share report. You have these nice little graphs that tell you, what percentage of units sold were in low tech and high tech. So we can see that low tech is quite a bit bigger than high tech. And we can also see what people sold to which segments. So we can see that Ferris has a really high red column and a really low blue column. So that means they sold a lot of units in high tech and less units in low tech. Me, Andrews, I have a high blue column, a short red column. I sold mostly to low tech, not a lot to high tech. And so you look at your actual market share right here, because I didn't stock out and no one else stocked out, my actual market share and my potential market share match up exactly. This isn't going to always be the case though. If you don't create the correct number of units and you stock out, then your actual market share is going to be lower than your potential market share. This is the simulation telling you that basically, I'm going to give you some example numbers. You could have sold 1,000 units, but you only produced 800 units. And so your potential market share is going to reflect that you sold all 800 units. But your actual market share is going to reflect that you sold all 800 units. And if you use that number, you're only going to sell 800 again. Your potential market share, though, is going to tell you you could have sold 1,000 units. And if you put that into the next round, then you are going to be a lot closer to your actual market share. You also can't over forecast too hard if you follow these numbers here. So if you guys remember from before, I had about 100 units left over. This is reflected in my actual market share. This isn't saying my market share, including the ones that I didn't sell, was 18%. This is saying only the things that I sold were 18% of the market share. So if you over forecast, you can still use your potential market share to forecast based on that. And so we can see 5,000 people in low tech. I took 18% of those 5,000 people. And so you can kind of use this with this nice little next round unit demand calculator that I showed you guys how to make. And you can use this to calculate exactly how many units you're going to make, give or take. One thing to take into account is the markets are not consistent. The growth rate is always changing, as I showed you guys. It's not always going to be 10% and 20%. It changes sometimes. Sometimes it's 18, sometimes it's 9%. You need to check that every round. But also, your potential market share is not going to stay consistent at all. As your product becomes better, your potential market share is going to grow. As more products enter the market and create more competition, your potential market share is going to diminish. And so if you follow only this and you use only this as a forecast, it might not be accurate because it's only based off of last round. This is what I sold in round one. The market in round two is entirely different. There's more products in the market, there's better competition in the market, and my product might not be as good, or it might be better. We don't know yet. And so what I'm showing you right now is a method of forecasting. It's not necessarily the best method or the correct method. You can look up different forecasting methods that are used in actual businesses and try to use those if you'd like. Maybe you could find that they were actually a lot closer to what you sold in this simulation. What I'm showing you here is just my method of forecasting. You can use whatever you want. So given that, I'm just going to continue on. Okay, so what we're looking for here is we're looking for our forecast per market, right? We want to see what percent of this pie are we going to take for round two, now that we've shown that the pie has grown a little bit. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use our potential market shares, keeping in mind that it's not always consistent. You guys want to use your potential market shares because your actual market shares only reflect how much you sold, not how much you could have sold. And so this right here, I'm gonna say, okay, I want to use my potential market share. What I'm gonna go and do right here is I'm gonna highlight these two columns, C and D. I'm gonna go up to number, and I'm gonna make these a percent. So my potential market share in low tech for Able is 18.3% in round one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these again, and I'm going to move over that decimal symbol, which right here you can see this is increased decimal, just to reflect that there is something after that 18. And my high tech potential market share was 15.6. So 15.6. What you can do, a valid method of forecasting, is you can just take this pie, multiply it. Oh gosh. You can take this pie, multiply it by your slice of the pie last round, and you can call that good. This isn't necessarily an accurate forecast, though, because markets change. And so you can go with this right here, and then you can judge based off of the market how much you want to change it. I could create this right here, copy and paste that to the right, and I can see that my total unit forecast for round one in this new pie was low tech plus high tech, 1,601 units. And I could leave it there. Or I could start looking at the market and I can try to get a more accurate forecast. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this, and this is all based off of what you think your market is going to do. This is stuff that actual professionals do. There's a lot of different forecasting methods out there, and this is just one of them. You could just spitball it. You can look at the market. You can be like, okay, I grew by around 200 units last round. I'm just going to assume that I'm going to grow by another 200 units. So I could take this and I could add 200 units, and I could call this my forecast. You could do something where you assume that these new products that are entering the market, Bold, Dabble, and My Apple, which is another new product, these three new products are going to take away from my pie. And I can come up with a number just on random or based on my own intuition. I can say, I had this slice of the pie in round one. I think that in round two, I'm going to take a smaller piece of the pie by about 100 units less. And I could call this my forecast. This is where your own intuition and these practice rounds are super useful. You're gonna have forecasting pretty down by or you should have forecasting pretty down by the end of the simulations. But for now, it's trial by fire. You need to figure out how markets react to changes and how forecasts change based on that. The method that I choose to subscribe to is what I'm going to call improvement. What I'm going to do right here is I'm going to highlight these two columns. I'm going to go up to font right here. I'm going to click down on this arrow, and I'm going to make them orange. You guys can make them any color you want. It doesn't matter. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this improvement all the way over to those colored columns. Go back to font, and I'm going to go to this right here, this border. Click the down arrow there, and I'm going to press, let's just say outside borders. So this improvement to me means how much has my pie grown, shrunk. It'll grow because new products enter the market or your product becomes worse comparatively. Wait, it'll shrink because new products enter the market or your product becomes worse compared to your competition. Or it'll shrink. Wait, it'll grow. Gosh, I'm sorry, you guys. Just reset. It will shrink if there are more pies in the market, more products. It'll also shrink if your product is worse compared to other people's. It will grow if your product is better than other people's. And that's about it. So if my price is a lot better than everyone else's, if my performance and size positioning is better than everyone else's, I need to take that into account in my slice of the pie. Like how much better do I think my pie is going to be? And so this is not a percent of how much better I think I am. I don't think that I'm 10% better than last round. Instead, this is a percent on how much more of that market share do you think I'll get? And so a 1% improvement is I'm going to take 1/100th of the market share. That's what that means. So a 1% improvement is actually quite a lot more than just a 1% improvement, if that makes any sense. It's essentially just saying my market share is going to improve by 1% more. So you need to take this into account in your forecast per market section right here. And you need to change this formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the whole formula just for you guys. Press equals this next round unit demand right there times, I'm going to throw a parentheses in right here, this potential market share plus improvement. And I'm going to close that off. What I can do right here is I can just Control C, Control V, and it copies over to the high-tech market as well, as you can see. So this improvement is entirely your own judgment. That's why I'm highlighting it like I am right here. Essentially, this is, I would say, how much more of more time to take. This improvement is basically just saying markets aren't consistent. This is your own judgment. This can be positive or negative. So I'm just going to give you an example on a positive improvement and a negative improvement. So let's say, like here, every single company is creating a new product. That means that the number of slices of pie are literally doubling. And so I'm going to take that into account. I'm going to think to myself, how much less of the pie am I going to own because of these new products? I'm not saying that there is a correct number here. This is just personal judgment, and I'm just going to put in a random number that say, because the number of products in the market are doubling, I'm going to take 4% less in the low tech and 4% less, -4% less in the high tech. So that's a 4% decrease in low tech, 4% decrease in high tech. The same thing could be applied if no new products entered the market and my price was just a lot worse than everyone else's comparative. As you can see right here, the only person that I'm beating is Fast. If I kept my price consistent and everyone dropped their price, then I can assume that the customers are going to like everyone else's products more, and I might need to take that into account. I'm going to take a pie that is 1% less. I'm going to lose 2/100ths of this pie, basically. A positive improvement would mean that I'm beating everyone else, even though there are new products entering the market. And so if I drop my price, I have a really solid positioning compared to everyone else. I have I gotta scroll down a little bit, but I have really good customer awareness and customer accessibility compared to everyone else. I need to take that into account, and I might say that I will improve over last round. So I'm gonna take an extra 1% in low tech, and I'm gonna take 1% in high tech. There are situations where you take a negative in one and you take a positive in the other, though. So what that means is, if you look at this perceptual map right here, these two circles move down and to the right every round. Your products stay in the exact same place. So if we take Fast into account here, and Fast doesn't move at all, these circles are going to move down and to the right, and Fast is going to comparatively move up and to the left. So next round, Fast might be in the middle of the circle, which means it's moving further away from the high-tech ideal, and it's moving closer to the low-tech ideal. And so I can kind of draw that for you guys. Fast is here this round. It might move up and to the left, and it might be here next round. This circle right here is about where the high-tech ideal is. This is about where the low-tech ideal is. You can see that it's getting closer to the low-tech ideal, further away from the high-tech ideal. So what I might do is I might say, because I'm moving closer to, if I was Ferris, I would take into account this, and I would say I might improve in the low-tech because I'm closer to their ideal. So I'm going to take an extra 1/100th of that pie, but I might unimprove in high-tech. So I'm going to take less of this high-tech and more of this low-tech because I'm closer to low-tech's ideal than I am to high-tech's ideal. Yep, this improvement is entirely based off of your own judgment. You guys are welcome to create any kind of forecasting tables that you want. You can look up actual businesses, forecasting methods. There's a billion of them out there, and they all have their merits. And I'm just gonna highlight this here. And wish you guys luck. You guys are welcome to use this. Good luck forecasting.